Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me at benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcast because People of Distinction is a nationally and internationally syndicated show because of listeners like you. Our shows are available across all major podcast distributors as well as YouTube. And if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. We appreciate the support. Continue to like and follow and sit back and strap in because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Dr. J Hilary Gbotoe. And we're going to be discussing his amazing book, Strategic Planning, Management Within the Local Church, available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all of the regular online book resellers. Head on over there today, pick up your copies, and get lost in this amazing book. And before we go any further, I want to take this opportunity and point out the fact that Dr. Gbotoe was brought to our network by one of the best publishing firms in the business. People you already know. I'm talking about Author Reputation Press. So if you're a writer out there, you've gone through your process and now you need help moving the masterpiece you just developed, contact ARP. This is exactly what they specialize in. You're going to want to head on over to authorreputationpress.com and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Dr. Gbotoe here on the line. Now, his book, Strategic Planning, Management Within the Local Church, is going to give you a great snapshot into just that. We're going to be talking about the church, and right now, how the church is in a bit of a transition. I mean, listen, I don't think it's news to anyone, or at least it shouldn't be, that in recent times, the local churches have seen a drastic decline. Christianity in and of itself and a lot of other religions are seeing a decline in its following. Now, if you look at the mega churches that you see on TV, you may think otherwise, and I guess that's understandable. But when you go down to those local churches within your neighborhood, you're going to see a different story entirely. Now, this book is not only informative, but it's educational because it's going to showcase the current state of the church, but it's also going to give helpful tips on how we can get it back to its previous strength and really make it as successful as ever. And Dr. Gbotoe is the one who knows what he's talking about, man. He has devoted his life to this, and he is in the church and knows exactly what to do. Sit back, strap in, and have your notebooks ready. Dr. Gbotoe, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Listen, the pleasure is all ours. Thank you for being with us. I think what you've done by comprising this narrative is something special and something that a lot of people need to hear. So we're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to reading the book once we complete this discussion. First and foremost, start by giving us a little more information on yourself and your background.
Thank you for having me. I'm originally from Liberia, West Africa, and I was born and raised in a Christian conservative home. But my dad was very interested in science, and he was a physicist, so he encouraged us all in that direction. So I grew up with a lot of inquiry, asking questions. So I was firm in my faith, but always ask questions about why this is happening, why that is happening, what works, what does not work. Mm-hmm. That was the household I grew up in. And then I also grew up in a Pentecostal holiness church. So it's a little bit funny because I grew up in a church that did not encourage people challenging stuff. And I grew up in a home that encouraged challenging assumptions. So as I got older, my goal was to become a physicist. And so I studied physics for a while, but then I felt the Lord calling me into ministry, so I switched and I went to seminary. And then I pastored for a while. I pastored a very large church in Liberia, West Africa for many years. I've been a pastor for over 35 years. And then there was a war in my country, and that led me to the USA. And I have been here for over some 20 some more years while the war was going on. And so while I was here, I further continue my education. I already had 2 degrees back home, so I did my master's here in organizational management. And then I did my first doctoral degree here in organizational leadership. And then I got a scholarship later on, so I did a second doctoral in education. So that's my background. Okay. And because I always ask questions based on my observation, that's what led to this book.
Love that. Well, listen, a couple of things here. First and foremost, thank you very much for articulating that. People, I told you, this man knows his stuff. Just look at his background. Look at the time that he's invested, and understand that there are very few that are more knowledgeable in this particular area to discuss this topic point than he is. So understand and take pride in the fact that the information you're going to be reading is coming from a very, very knowledgeable place. My follow-up, and something that you ended on, Dr. Gbotoe, is talking about the inspiration for this book. Well, it's clear to me, given your background, why this was something that you were particularly interested in learning. And sure, you wanted to learn about it, put it down into a book format. That makes sense. Well, why did you then take it a step further and publish the book for others? What are you hoping that others are able to receive from your book and run with?
Thank you for that question. I have a lot of assumptions about the church, and I believe a lot of believers have the assumptions. And so my assumption was the more educated a pastor is, it will have greater influence not only in the local church pastors, but in the community in which the church is located. And, so coming from Africa, those are also who are well educated. We have a degree from seminary and other places. We have a lot of influence. And then coming to America, and I saw the local churches really struggling. And so that assumption, it was wrong. It has nothing to do with your education. So I began to ask questions. Why is it that we have these mega churches on TV, but the local churches are really struggling? I really wanted to know. And so I started to ask questions. But then during my first doctoral in organizational leadership, for my dissertation, I decided to take this on and to do a research in this area. Why is it that these local churches are struggling? And so after 2 years of surveying over 250 churches from 13 states, I realized that the problem with the church was lack of strategic planning. It has nothing to do with the level of education. It has nothing to do with how well the person understood and interpreted the scripture. It has nothing to do with that. The church as a whole lack strategic planning. And so that's why I decided to write this book based out of my research.
Well, there you have it. Well, okay, so following you here with the research that was conducted, and you recognize that a lot of churches struggle from a strategic planning standpoint. Well, without going into all of the specifics, because people, you want to gather all the helpful tips. There's no way around it. All right? It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's a whole host of other places. It's called strategic planning management within the local church. Head on over there, purchase your copies, and you can get all of them. But since we have you here on the line, Dr. Gbotoe, what are maybe 1 or 2 fundamental tips that you can offer to help improve a church's strategic planning?
Thank you for that. And in the book, I talk about that, what strategic leadership is not. So the very first thing we need to do, we should start looking at talent, gifts, and charisma, okay, in the church. Because we always rally ourselves around someone who is a charismatic speaker, a gifted speaker, we're knowledgeable. We surround ourselves around that person. And so one of the things I found was that it's like the church is the only place where you have a Superman running everything, and the recent businesses, people around, they are making impact. There is no Superman. But in the church, we are always looking for a Superman to solve the problem of the local church. So that's the first thing. That's where we have to start. It is not about being knowledgeable, gifted, or talented. It is not about charisma. Okay. The second thing that we need to understand is that the church as a whole, the leadership of the local church, I'm not talking about the denominational hierarchy, but the local church. We should think through the ways decisions are made. Because the decisions we made in the local churches affect the community in which the local church exists. Okay? And for us to do that, we should be able to create the atmosphere for the people in the church, the stakeholders in the church, to effectively communicate, the ideas and the suggestions to the leadership. Now, that does not mean the leadership will incorporate everything that is suggested, but people should have a safe space to express themselves. Being born and raised, and not just raised, because I always tell people I was in my mother's womb when I was going to church. So being born and raised in the church, one of the challenges we have is that people cannot question things. I know growing up as a child, I will have questions in church that I will ask and I'll be shut down. But thank God for my dad, who was a deacon in the church, who believes in inquiry and asking questions. So we'll go home and we'll ask. And he will always encourage us. And if he does not have the answer, he will tell us, I don't know, I will look into this. So that brings me to my third point. If the church should be strategic in its approach, the leadership should not give people the assumption that we know it all. We don't know it all. We don't know it all. So what we need to do is to tap into the gifts and talent that God has brought into the church. We should tap into that. And so I can stop there for now.
Okay. Absolutely. My follow-up question that I want to go into is something that I think, I'm really curious to take your particular perspective on this. Now, you've referenced before, and I know your book discusses, mega churches, right? Churches that you can find on TV, you can find online, and you can be a part of their congregation digitally. Well, I do think that it's something to explore, and maybe since you're the ones that done the research, maybe it isn't something worth exploring. But I'm curious here, how do you think that the digital world that we currently live in could also help assist or maybe even grow a following of a local church by utilizing either social media, websites, or even Zoom webinars in that fashion, so that people don't necessarily need to go to the church in the traditional sense, but they can go online from the comfort of their own home. Is there anything with regards to that could also help improve a church's following?
Thank you. Although COVID was not a good thing, but thank God for COVID. Because that have brought that conversation. I'm part of a group of pastors that we are researching that right now. We are researching the impact that is having, and we will be coming up with suggestions for churches, and how churches can tap into that. And I think that's one way the local church can have influence. Because what we are talking about here is the influence that we have. To be able to shape the lives of people so that we can represent Christ and do those things that Jesus really taught. the sad thing in the church today is that we never focus on the teaching of Jesus. So by using social media, I think, but we still doing our research. The first phase was of a church that since COVID that are still use social media to reach their people. So we want to see the strength and the weaknesses, what they are doing, what working, what not working. And so after that, we will do the next phase of our research. But we are looking into that.
Well, people, listen, this book is magnificent, but understand that this is not the only one. All right, now Dr. Gbotoe is in the process of creating another one. So at this time, Strategic Planning is the book that you're going to want to grab, but be on the lookout because he has another book called The Message. Again, still in creation, but it's going to be available very, very shortly, and you're going to want to pick that one up as well. As we close out of here, Dr. Gbotoe, tell us a brief synopsis of this upcoming book so we know what to expect when we run on over and pick it up.
Thank you. So for long, people have believed that God is punishing them. And I have preached that, being a pastor for over 35 years. And in 2014, I decided to do a series of messages on the Christmas story. And I entitled it The Miracle of Christmas. And I thought it was just going to be 4 or 5 Sundays. But it took me 5 years to develop and preach that message. And I do that every November and December since 2014 for 5 years. And what I found was that God was sending a message to the world, to each of the characters in that story. And God was saying to us, I'm a loving God. I care for you. I love you. And God was saying to us, there is no way you can get to my level, but I am coming down to your level to change your situation and bring you to my level. Why? So you can become the salt of the earth and the light of the world, so that all men will know that I do care and I love. And so I was really stoned because I was shocked coming from my background. And I used to be very legalistic. But trust me, these 5-6 years of studying the Christmas story have really changed me to love people more. And I think the church, we are not representing God well in this world, where people are hurting, even people in the church. Mm-hmm. I met a lady to close this when I was doing my series. I met a lady in the hospital where I used to work also, and she told me she was an atheist. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Can you tell me more about why you are an atheist? And I was shocked. For 4 hours, I thought this was going to take us 2-3 minutes. For 4 hours, kept me there talking about her experience in the church. She was even a missionary to Brazil for 16 years. And then the interesting thing, she came from my background, a Pentecostal holiness background. And so I'm like, you were a missionary for 16 years. Mm-hmm. How come you are now an atheist? And she shared, and I can't say the things she said to me because of privacy issue, and then I have a consent to say so I'll just generalize. But she shared with me the hurt she went through, the challenges she went through, and how the church abused and treated her for those 16 years she was in Brazil, and how the church turned her against her own family, and how she was isolated from her parents. She went there as a teenager. And when she needed the church the most, they turned their back on her. And who helped her? She met a lady who was visiting Brazil. And the lady was an atheist, and at that time she had become homeless because she was kicked out of the mission station in Brazil. And that lady brought her back to America. That lady helped her to get her GED, because when she went as a missionary, she was not even out of high school. She was 16 years old when she joined that movement. And they let her help her get her GED. They let her help her to go back to school. And up to now, she is a medical doctor. And yes, somebody who's supposed to be influencing the world, and the person considers herself an atheist. Wow. Because we are not demonstrating the love and compassion of Jesus. So I think in this book, when we choose, because it's a choice we have to make, it's a decision we have to make. Mm-hmm. To understand the message God has sent to the world. And we choose, again, to abandon our legalism, not to compromise the gospel, because sometimes people confuse the two, but to abandon our legalism and to show compassion to people. If we don't do that, we'll keep losing people. How can somebody be a missionary for 16 years and the person is not an atheist? Think about that.
Well, listen, Dr. Gbotoe, you have given us a lot to think about, man. People, again, that book we just finished discussing is called The Message. It's not available for purchase just yet, but you're going to want to pick it up very, very shortly. But I promise you, his other book, Strategic Planning, is going to give you enough to keep you occupied until the other one is released. Amazon, Barnes & Noble are where you got to go. Head on over there and pick up this masterpiece because it's something that is going to drastically improve your local church and your community moving forward. Head on over there. Dr. Gbotoe, this has been an absolute pleasure, such an honor. Thank you for the wonderful words of wisdom, but thank you again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure and honor to be on.